My name is Jade, and I am 32 years old. My family spent the day of my grandmother's funeral treating me like a low-level servant who didn't have 2 pennies to rub together, even though I was the one who paid for the very ground they were standing on. They thought they were about to inherit a fortune and leave me in the dust, but they didn't realize that the maid who had been taking care of Big Mama for 3 years was actually me, and I already had my name on the deed. Before I tell you how I watched them crumble from the front row of the courtroom, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit that like and subscribe button if you have ever been underestimated by the people who are supposed to love you most. Now, y'all won't believe the heat that was bouncing off the pavement at the Elizabeth Baptist Church in Cascade Heights that afternoon. It was that thick Georgia humidity that makes your clothes stick to your back before you even get out of the car. I was standing there in my faded blue pharmacy scrubs, the ones I wear when I want to look like a struggling essential worker, wiping sweat from my forehead with a paper towel. I didn't have on a drop of makeup. I looked like a woman who had spent the last 48 hours crying and the last 3 years exhausted. And honestly, I was. But I wasn't just tired from the grief, I was tired of the acting. I watched as a fleet of black Cadillac Escalades pulled up to the curb. My Aunt Brenda stepped out first. She was draped in what she claimed was a custom Chanel suit, but I could see the loose threads on the hem from 5 feet away. She stepped onto the sidewalk and immediately started fanning herself with a program, as if the sun was personally attacking her. "Jade, thank goodness you're out here," Brenda barked, not even looking me in the eye. She reached into her bag and pulled out a set of keys, tossing them at my chest. I caught them, but only because my reflexes are faster than her attitude. "Marcus is right behind me in the Range Rover. Go park it. And make sure you don't scuff those rims. He just spent $450.75 getting them detailed for the service." I looked down at the keys. I didn't say a word. I just did what I always do. I played the gray rock. I acted like I was a piece of the scenery, as unbothered as a stone in a garden. "Aunt Brenda, the service starts in 10 minutes, I said quietly, keeping my voice low and flat. "And? You aren't needed inside for the family seating anyway," she snapped, adjusting her oversized sunglasses that were definitely a knockoff from a boutique in Buckhead. "You're the help today, Jade. You've been Big Mama's little live-in maid for years, so you might as well finish the job. Now go." I watched her sashay into the church, her heels clicking against the stone. Then came my cousin Marcus. He pulled up in a white Range Rover that I knew for a fact was 3 months behind on payments. He hopped out wearing a suit that was too tight in the shoulders and a pair of designer loafers without socks. "Yo, Jade, move it or lose it, sis," Marcus yelled, leaning against the door. "Make sure you park it in the shade. I don't want the leather getting hot. It's Italian, you know. Cost me $3,200. The math wasn't mathing because I knew Marcus's credit score started with a 4. But I didn't argue. I climbed into that hot car and drove it to the back of a lot. As I sat in the driver's seat for a second, I looked at my own wrist. I slid back the sleeve of my scrub top to reveal a Patek Philippe Nautilus. It was a gift to myself when my pharmaceutical consulting firm hit its first $8 million year. The watch alone was worth $145,000. I looked at it, clicked the face shut, and hid it back under my dusty sleeve. When I finally walked into the sanctuary, the air conditioning hit me like a blessing from a church mother. The room was filled with the scent of lilies, $5,000 worth of lilies to be exact, which Brenda had ordered and then sent the invoice to Big Mama's estate. I saw them all sitting in the front row. Brenda, Marcus, and the rest of the golden children who hadn't stepped foot in Big Mama's house in 3 years unless they needed a loan. They were sobbing into silk handkerchiefs, acting like they were the ones who had been changing her bandages and cooking her Sunday dinners. I took a seat in the very last row, right next to the door. One of the church mothers, Mrs. Gable, leaned over and patted my hand. She was the only one who really knew how much I had done. "You okay, sugar?" she whispered. "You look like you haven't slept since the Obama administration." "I'm fine, Mrs. Gable," I whispered back. "I'm just watching the show."
And what a show it was! Brenda stood up to give the eulogy. She went on and on about Big Mama's legacy and how she had entrusted her most precious assets to the family. She kept looking over at the casket, which was a solid mahogany model that cost $9,600. "We know Big Mama wanted us to carry on the family name with style," Brenda told the congregation, dabbing at a dry eye. "And we are going to make sure her home, that beautiful estate in Buckhead, remains a testament to her success. We've already started making plans for the renovation." I almost laughed out loud. These people were already picking out paint colors for a house they didn't even have the keys to. They thought that because I was the boring granddaughter who lived in the guest suite and wore scrubs every day, I was just the unpaid labor. They called me the caretaker, like it was a slur. After the service, we went to the graveside. It was a $600 per person catered affair back at the house afterward. Marcus was already walking around the backyard, pointing at the pool and telling his friends where he was going to put the new outdoor kitchen. "I'm thinking about a built-in grill, maybe $10,000 or so," I heard him tell a girl in a bandage dress. "My inheritance is going to cover that and then some." Brenda walked up to me while I was clearing away some empty plates. "Jade, honey, don't get too comfortable. We're having the lawyer over tomorrow morning for a preliminary talk. Since you aren't actually family in the eyes of the law, just a distant relative who acted as a nurse, you'll need to have your bags packed by noon." She had the audacity to say that while standing on a rug that cost more than her car. "I understand, Aunt Brenda," I said, keeping my face completely blank. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I didn't tell her about the $5 million I had sitting in a high-yield savings account, or the fact that I owned the very firm that Big Mama had used for her investments. "Good," she said, flicking a crumb off her sleeve. "I'm glad we're on the same page. You've been a good little maid, Jade, truly. But the grown-ups have business to attend to now." She walked away, laughing with a group of women about the upgrade she was about to give her life. I stood there, holding a stack of dirty napkins and watching them celebrate a victory they hadn't won yet. They thought they had finally pushed the broke member of the family out of the door. They thought they were about to walk into a life of luxury at my expense. But they forgot one small thing. I wasn't just the one who took care of Big Mama. I was the one who helped her rewrite her will 3 months ago. And as I watched Marcus pour a glass of $250 champagne into a plastic cup, I realized I hadn't told them the best part yet. He thought he had won. He thought the house, the money, and the legacy were his for the taking. But he forgot that while he was busy playing the fake baller, I was the one who had the only set of keys that actually mattered. Y'all, the sun hadn't even finished coming up over the dogwood trees in Buckhead before Brenda started making enough noise to wake the dead. It was the morning after the funeral, and you would have thought she'd already won the lottery the way she was prancing around Big Mama's kitchen. I was sitting at the small breakfast nook, the one Big Mama and I used every single morning for 3 years to eat our grits and talk about the news. I was nursing a lukewarm cup of coffee, the cheap, bitter stuff Brenda bought because she'd already raided the pantry and hidden Big Mama's $200 stash of Kona beans in her own suitcase. I didn't say a word. I just sat there in my dusty, oversized HBCU sweatshirt and some leggings with a small hole in the knee. I looked exactly like the broke relative they wanted me to be.
Jade, honestly, I don't know how you can just sit there looking so uninspired, Brenda said, swishing past me. She was wearing a silk robe she claimed was Tom Ford, probably costing her $850 on a credit card that was currently screaming for mercy. This house is about to undergo a massive transformation. I've already got a designer coming out from New York. We're talking a $120,000 kitchen remodel, marble from Italy, gold fixtures, the works. That sounds expensive, Aunt Brenda, I said, keeping my voice as flat as a week-old soda. Well, quality costs, honey. Something you wouldn't understand, working behind a plastic counter at a CVS, she sneered. She reached into the cabinet and pulled out a crystal glass that cost $95. She filled it with orange juice like she owned the place. You've spent so much time being a caretaker that you've forgotten how to move in certain circles. It's a shame, really. You have that expensive degree from Spelman, and for what? To count pills for $45 an hour? I didn't correct her. I didn't tell her that as a pharmaceutical consultant with my own firm, my hourly rate was actually $650. I didn't tell her that the pill counting she looked down on had allowed me to build a portfolio worth $7,800,000 while she was busy leasing Mercedes-Benzes she couldn't afford. I just took another sip of my bad coffee. The Grey Rock doesn't provide information. The Grey Rock just absorbs the hits. Right then, Marcus strolled into the kitchen, looking like he'd just rolled out of a music video that went straight to DVD. He was on his phone, talking loudly about assets and liquidity. He was wearing a pair of track pants that cost $525 and a t-shirt with a designer logo so big it looked like a billboard. Yeah, man, tell the dealership I'll be there on Friday with the down payment, Marcus said into his phone, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. $40,000. Cash. I'm upgrading to the G-Wagon, the matte black one. He hung up and looked at me like I was a smudge on the floor. Yo, Jade, you still here? I thought Mama told you to start packing. We need this guest suite for my content room. I'm gonna be filming my investment seminars in here. I'm working on it, Marcus, I replied. Working on it? It's a suitcase and some scrubs, girl. It shouldn't take you more than 20 minutes, he laughed, grabbing a piece of toast off the counter. You're lucky we're even letting you stay the night. Most people would have had the locks changed the minute the casket hit the dirt. The audacity was truly something to behold. They were acting like Big Mama hadn't spent the last decade complaining about how Marcus only called when he needed $2,000 for rent, and how Brenda only visited when she wanted to borrow a piece of jewelry that somehow never found its way back to the jewelry box. Now, Marcus, don't be mean, Brenda said, though her smile didn't reach her eyes. Jade has been very helpful with the domestic duties, but business is business. The lawyer, Mr. Sterling, will be here at 10 o'clock sharp. He's going to confirm what we already know. Big Mama left the estate to her natural heirs. That's me, and by extension, you. What about the maid? Marcus asked, his eyes gleaming with malice. The one Big Mama kept talking about in those last weeks. She kept saying, the maid is going to be taken care of. You think she left some of my money to a cleaning lady? Brenda waved her hand dismissively, her fake gold bracelets clinking together. Please, that woman was senile at the end. She probably meant she left her a $500 tip in an envelope somewhere. Besides, there is no maid. We've been the ones looking after this family's legacy. I almost choked on my coffee. They hadn't seen Big Mama in months before she passed. I was the one who sat by her bed. I was the one who made sure her medicine was administered at 3 o'clock in the morning. I was the one who handled the payroll for the groundskeepers, paying out $4,800 every month from my own business account because Big Mama's liquid cash was tied up in trusts they didn't know existed. I'm going to go get dressed for the meeting, I said, standing up. Good idea, Brenda said, looking me up and down. Try to find something that doesn't have a stain on it. It's a $5 million estate meeting, Jade. Try to show a little respect for the tax bracket we're about to be in. I walked back to the guest suite, the room that had been my headquarters for 3 years. I closed the door and locked it. Then I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop. I logged into my private banking portal. My eyes skimmed over the numbers. My personal liquid balance was $3,422,000.12. That didn't even include the trust Big Mama had set up for me, or the deed to the house, which was already sitting in my digital vault. I saw a notification pop up on my screen. It was an alert from Big Mama's emergency credit card. Transaction, $1,200.50. Location, the Gold Room, Buckhead. I checked the timestamp. 3 o'clock this morning.
Marcus hadn't even waited for the will to be read before he started stealing from the dead. He thought he was being slick, using a card that Big Mama usually kept in her nightstand. He didn't realize that the emergency card was linked directly to my phone.
I could have canceled the card right then. I could have called the police and had him picked up for credit card fraud before he even finished his breakfast. But I didn't. I wanted them to feel entirely secure. I wanted them to walk into that meeting at 10 o'clock thinking they were the kings and queens of the world. I went to my closet and pulled out a simple black turtleneck and slacks. No labels, no logos, just quiet, expensive fabric. I checked my Patek Philippe watch again. It was 9:15. I heard a knock on the door. It wasn't a polite knock. It was the get out of my house bang of Aunt Brenda. Jade, Mr. Sterling is pulling up in the driveway. Get out here and set out some water for him. And use the good crystal, not the chipped ones. I took a deep breath, adjusted my sleeves to hide my watch, and put on my struggling face. The stage was set. The villains were in their Sunday best, ready to claim a prize that didn't belong to them. They thought they were about to kick the broke sister to the curb with nothing but a suitcase and a wave. But as I walked down the hallway, I realized I'd forgotten to tell Brenda one very important thing about the maid Big Mama loved so much. Brenda thought she was the one in charge because she had the loudest voice. But she forgot the person who holds the keys is the one who decides who gets to stay in the house. And I was about to show her that my broke status was the most expensive mistake she ever made. Now y'all won't believe the audacity that walked through the front door at exactly 10 o'clock. Mr. Sterling, Big Mama's longtime attorney, pulled up in a slate gray Mercedes-Benz S-Class that probably cost $110,000 and 0 cents. He was a sharp man, the kind of black man who always looks like he just stepped out of a magazine, with a silver beard and a suit that cost more than Marcus's entire designer wardrobe. Brenda was already at the door before he could even ring the bell. She was practically vibrating with greed. She had changed into a different outfit, a cream-colored knit set she probably thought made her look like an old-money matriarch. Mr. Sterling, thank you for coming so promptly, Brenda cooed, her voice sounding like honey poured over a razor blade. We've been waiting. It's been such a difficult time, you know, managing the estate, making sure Big Mama's legacy is protected. Mr. Sterling didn't even crack a smile. He just nodded and stepped into the foyer, his polished shoes clicking on the $5,000 marble tiles. Mrs. Brenda, Marcus, and Jade. Good to see you again. Oh, Jade is just helping out with the refreshments, Brenda said quickly, waving me toward the kitchen like I was a fly she was trying to swat. She's been very
present. Now, let's go into the study. I've already laid out some snacks. I hope you like smoked salmon. It was $68 a pound from the boutique grocer in Buckhead.
I didn't say a word. I just went to the kitchen and grabbed the tray I had prepared. I had used the good crystal, the Waterford glasses that Big Mama only brought out for Sunday dinner when the pastor came over. Each of those glasses was worth $125. As I walked into the study, Marcus was leaning against Big Mama's mahogany desk like he was the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. He was checking his reflection in a $3,000 gilded mirror and adjusting his fake diamond earring. "So, Sterling," Marcus said, not even bothering to use the man's title, "let's get to the good stuff. We know the house is worth $2,400,000, and we know about the $5 million life insurance policy. How soon can we start the liquidations? I've got a business opportunity in the NFT space that needs a $40,000 seed investment by Friday." Mr. Sterling sat down and opened his leather briefcase. He took out a thick stack of papers and laid them on the desk. "Marcus, probate is a process. It doesn't happen overnight. And before we discuss any distributions, we have to look at the recent activity on the estate's accounts." My heart did a little jump, but I kept my face as blank as a fresh sheet of paper. I set the tray down on the coffee table and started pouring the water. "Recent activity?" Brenda asked, her voice hitching just a tiny bit. "Well, of course, there were the funeral expenses, $9,600 for the casket, $5,000 for the flowers. It adds up." "I'm not talking about the funeral, Brenda," Mr. Sterling said, looking over his spectacles. "I'm talking about a charge from 3 o'clock this morning at a nightclub in Buckhead called the Gold Room. $1,200.50 for bottle service on Big Mama's emergency credit card." The room went so quiet you could hear the hum of the $5,000 refrigerator in the kitchen. Marcus didn't even blink. "Oh, that? Yeah, I had to take out some potential investors to talk about the family legacy. It was a business expense. Big Mama would have wanted me to network." "Big Mama is dead, Marcus," Mr. Sterling said flatly. "And that card was supposed to be in her nightstand for medical emergencies only. Using it for bottle service is technically fraud." "Fraud? Between family? Don't be dramatic, Sterling," Brenda laughed, though it sounded forced. "Marcus is an heir. It's all coming out of his portion anyway, right? Now let's talk about the caretaker clause. Big Mama mentioned leaving something to the person who looked after her. We assume she meant a small thank you bonus of maybe $5,000 for Jade here." She looked at me with so much pity, I almost felt sorry for her. She really thought she was the one holding the deck. "The will is very specific about the caretaker," Mr. Sterling said, his eyes shifting to me for a split second before going back to the papers. "But we aren't reading the full will today. Today is just the preliminary audit. I need to ensure all assets are accounted for. Jade, as the primary person in the house for the last 3 years, do you have the inventory of the jewelry vault?" "I do, Mr. Sterling," I said quietly. "Everything is documented. I even took photos of the Chanel pearl necklace and the 10-carat diamond ring Big Mama wore to the HBCU gala last year." "Good," he said, "because I've noticed a few items missing from the insurance rider. A Patek Philippe ladies' watch, for one, valued at $85,000. Brenda's hand went to her throat. "Oh, that? Big Mama probably mislaid it. You know how she was toward the end. Very forgetful. Gaslighting herself, really." The math wasn't mathing for Brenda, because she didn't realize I had the receipts. I knew exactly where that watch was. It wasn't mislaid. It was currently sitting in a pawn shop drawer in West Midtown because Marcus needed $20,000 to pay off a gambling debt 3 weeks ago. "Well, we'll find it," Marcus said, waving a hand. "Look, can we wrap this up? I've got a lunch meeting at Bones. I'm spending $350 on a steak and I don't want to be late. Mr. Sterling stood up and packed his bags. We're done for today, but I suggest no one else uses any estate funds until the formal reading. I'll be watching the accounts. As soon as the front door closed behind Mr. Sterling, Brenda turned on me like a snake. Did you tell him? She hissed, stepping into my personal space. Did you tell him about the watch? I know you're the one who's been auditing everything like a little snitch. I didn't tell him anything, Aunt Brenda, I said, staying in my gray rock zone. I just answered his questions. Listen to me, you dusty little pharmacist, Marcus said, walking over to me. He pulled out a wad of cash, probably the last of the money he'd stolen, and flicked a $50 bill at my feet. Pick that up. It's more than you make in an hour. Stay in your lane and keep your mouth shut, or I'll make sure you don't even get that $5,000 thank you bonus. You'll be back in a studio apartment in the hood before the month is out. I looked down at the $50 bill on the floor. I didn't pick it up. I'm going to go run some errands, I said calmly. I need to get some things for the house. Yeah, go buy some better clothes, Brenda called out as I walked away. You're embarrassing us. I walked out to my car, a sensible 10-year-old Toyota that I kept specifically for this character. I drove 10 minutes away to a high-rise in Midtown. I pulled into the private resident garage, where my real car, a $220,000 silver Aston Martin, was tucked away under a silk cover. I took the private elevator to the penthouse. When the doors opened, the floor-to-ceiling windows showed the entire Atlanta skyline. My $500,000 art collection was glowing under the recessed lighting. I sat down at my glass desk and opened my laptop. I didn't just have the Nest camera footage from Big Mama's house. I had the hidden camera footage from the hallway outside the jewelry vault. I clicked play. There was Marcus, 2 weeks ago, using a coat hanger to fish the Patek Philippe watch out of the velvet tray while Big Mama was sleeping in the other room. But then I saw something I didn't expect. The video kept playing. After Marcus left the room, Brenda walked in. She didn't look for the watch. She went straight to the floorboard under the rug. She pulled up a loose plank and pulled out a small black ledger. She opened it, scribbled something down, and then pulled out a vial of clear liquid. My heart stopped. I zoomed in on the vial. It was a prescription-strength sedative, something that, in high doses, would look like a natural heart failure in an 80-year-old woman. Brenda wasn't just a narcissist and a thief. She was a scapegoat maker with a much darker plan. The math finally mathed. They hadn't just been waiting for Big Mama to pass away. They had been making sure of it. I leaned back in my $12,000 ergonomic chair and felt a cold chill run down my spine. They thought they were playing me for a fool. They thought they were the predators and I was the prey. But they forgot one thing. I'm a pharmacist. I know exactly what that liquid does to a body, and I know exactly how to prove it. She thought he'd won because he had a $50 bill to throw at me. But he forgot. I still had the keys to the lab results from Big Mama's final toxicology report. Now, y'all, I didn't even have time to fully process that video of Brenda and her little mystery vial before my phone started blowing up with texts from the family group chat. It was mostly Marcus posting pictures of $200 bottles of Ace of Spades at the club. But then Brenda chimed in. Jade, we need to talk. Be at the house by 5 o'clock sharp. Don't be late. I took a deep breath, closed my $3,500 laptop, and looked out at the Atlanta skyline from my penthouse. My heart was thumping, but my head was clear. I had the evidence of the theft. I had the evidence of the forgery. And now I had something that looked a whole lot like a crime scene on camera. But I couldn't move too fast. A narcissist like Brenda thrives on your reaction, and I wasn't about to give her a single crumb of my emotions. I changed back into my dusty pharmacy uniform, the one with the small bleach stain on the pocket, and drove my old Toyota back to the Buckhead estate. When I walked through the front door, the house felt different. It didn't smell like Big Mama's lavender sachets or Sunday dinner anymore. It smelled like expensive cigars and desperation. Brenda was sitting at the dining room table, which was a solid oak piece worth $6,800. She was holding a single sheet of paper like it was a royal decree. Marcus was standing behind her, wearing a new Versace robe that probably cost him $1,800. He was scrolling through his phone, probably checking the likes on his fake wealth posts. "Sit down, Jade," Brenda said, her voice cold enough to freeze water. I sat. I didn't say a word. I just looked at her with my gray rock face, completely blank, completely bored. "We've been doing some thinking," Brenda started, sliding that piece of paper across the table. I watched her hand. She was wearing a fake gold bracelet that was already turning her wrist green, but she had the audacity to act like she was royalty. "Since the funeral is over and the preliminary meeting with Mr. Sterling is done, there's no reason for you to be taking up space in this house. You were a caretaker, and the job is finished." I looked down at the paper. It was a notice to vacate. It wasn't even on legal letterhead. It was typed in a messy font and signed by Brenda at the bottom. "You're giving me 48 hours?" I asked softly. 48 hours is being generous," Marcus piped up, not even looking up from his screen. "I've already got a contractor coming in to turn your room into my new vlog suite. We're spending $25,000 on soundproofing and lighting. You're holding up progress, sis." "Marcus, let me handle this," Brenda snapped, then turned her focus back to me. "Jade, I know you think Big Mama loved you, but let's be real. You were a charity case. You were the broke relative who couldn't make it on her own, so she let you stay here to scrub her floors and change her linens. But this is a $5 million estate. It's not a homeless shelter." The gaslighting was almost impressive. She wanted me to believe I was a burden, when I was the one who had spent $892.40 of my own money every month just to keep the pantry stocked with the organic food Big Mama needed. "I've lived here for 3 years, Aunt Brenda," I said, keeping my tone level. "I have rights as a tenant. You can't just throw me out in 2 days without a court order." Brenda laughed, a sharp, jagged sound. "Rights? You don't have a lease. You don't pay rent. You're a squatter. And if you aren't out by Saturday morning, I'm calling the police to have you removed for trespassing. I've already talked to the church mothers about it, and they agree. It's time for the family to move on from the tragedy." She was already using her flying monkeys, the neighborhood gossips, to paint me as the villain. It's the classic narcissist playbook. Isolate the scapegoat, ruin their reputation, and then kick them when they're down. "And don't even think about taking anything with you," Marcus added, finally putting his phone down. He walked over and leaned on the table, smelling like a $400 bottle of Tom Ford cologne that he definitely didn't pay for. "Everything in this house belongs to the estate. That means the furniture, the silver, and especially the jewelry. We know you've been guarding Big Mama's safe. If one piece of Chanel is missing, I'm filing a police report." I looked him dead in the eye. I wanted to tell him that I knew he'd already pawned the Patek watch for $12,000. I wanted to tell him that I had the receipt from the pawn shop in my bag. But I didn't. I just blinked. "I understand," I said.
Do you? Brenda leaned forward, her eyes narrow. Because you seem awfully calm for someone who's about to be sleeping in her car. Maybe you've been stealing more than we thought? Maybe you've got a little nest egg hidden away.
I don't have any money, Aunt Brenda, I lied. It felt good to say it. I've spent everything I earned at the pharmacy on Big Mama's extra expenses.
Well, that was your choice. Poor financial planning isn't my problem, she said, standing up and smoothing out her skirt. Saturday, noon. I want the keys on this table. And Jade, don't make a scene. It would be such a shame for the neighbors to see you being hauled away in handcuffs on a Sunday morning right before church. She walked away, her heels clicking on the floor like she'd already won the war. Marcus followed her, laughing about how he was going to buy a $10,000 sofa for his new office. I sat there for a long time, looking at that crumpled piece of paper. The audacity of it was breathtaking. She was trying to evict me from a house that I technically already owned through the trust. She was trying to treat me like a servant in the very halls where I had provided her mother with the only real care she'd had in a decade. I stood up and walked to the kitchen. I grabbed the glass of water using one of the $60 crystal tumblers Marcus thought he was going to inherit. I thought about the vial I saw on the video. I thought about the clear liquid Brenda was holding while Big Mama slept. The math was finally adding up, and the total was a whole lot darker than just some stolen jewelry. I pulled out my phone and sent a quick text to Mr. Sterling, the attorney. They just handed me an eviction notice, 48 hours. Let them play their hand, Jade. The trap is already set. Just make sure you're packed. We have the expert ally arriving tomorrow. I felt a cold smile spread across my face. Brenda thought she was clearing out the trash. She thought she was finally getting rid of the dusty niece who knew too much. She thought she was about to step into a life of luxury and leave me with nothing. But as I looked at the notice to vacate on the table, I noticed one small detail Brenda had missed. In her rush to be a boss lady, she had typed the address of the house wrong. She had used the neighbor's address on the legal form. She couldn't even manage a fake eviction without messing it up. I walked back to my room and started packing my bags, not because I was scared, but because I was ready to move into the next phase of the plan. I packed my scrubs, my old books, and my hidden camera equipment. Then I reached under the mattress and pulled out the one thing Brenda and Marcus would have killed to get their hands on. It wasn't jewelry. It wasn't cash. It was a small, leather-bound journal Big Mama had kept during her final months. I flipped to the last page, dated just 3 days before she passed. The handwriting was shaky, but the words were clear. Brenda brought me more of that special tea today. It tastes like metal. I told Jade to keep the cameras running. I don't trust my own daughter, but I trust the girl who actually stays. Brenda thought she'd won because she had the paper in her hand, but she forgot the most important rule of the game. Never try to outsmart a woman who has nothing to lose and all the receipts. After Brenda slammed my door and left me with that raggedy, misspelled eviction notice, I didn't cry, and I definitely didn't start packing my socks. I just sat on the edge of my twin bed, took a deep breath, and pulled out my iPad Pro, the 12-inch model with the cellular chip that cost me $1,299.00. I didn't use the house Wi-Fi because I knew Marcus was tech-savvy enough to check the router logs if he got suspicious. Instead, I tethered to my own private hotspot and opened the Nest app. Now, y'all, Big Mama was old school, but she wasn't a fool. When she started realizing things were disappearing from her nightstand, she didn't call the police. She called me. I had spent $3,400 installing high-definition pinhole cameras throughout the main areas of the house, including one tucked perfectly into the pupil of her oil-painted portrait in the study.
I swiped the screen and tapped the study feed. The room was beautiful, even with the stench of Marcus's cheap cigars lingering in the air. It featured a $3,800 executive desk made of solid cherry wood and a set of built-in bookshelves filled with leather-bound classics that Big Mama used to read to me after Sunday dinner. Marcus was in there right now. He had shed his Versace robe and was wearing a pair of joggers and a stained t-shirt, looking nothing like the multi-millionaire mogul he portrayed on Instagram. He was hunched over the desk, his tongue poking out of the corner of his mouth like a child trying to color inside the lines. "Come on, Ethel, just one more time," I heard him mutter through the iPad speakers. The audio was crystal clear. He was practicing Big Mama's signature on a stack of yellow legal pads. He was using a Mont Blanc Meisterstück fountain pen that Big Mama had bought for $2,500 for her 50th wedding anniversary. It was a heavy, gold-nibbed pen that required a steady hand, something Marcus definitely didn't have because he was shaking like a leaf in a Georgia thunderstorm. The math wasn't mathing for him. He was trying to forge a quitclaim deed, a legal document that would transfer the title of the Buckhead estate, valued at $2,400,000, directly into his name. "It's too shaky," Brenda's voice came from off-camera. She walked into the frame, clutching a glass of that $2 champagne she loved so much. She was still wearing that $850 silk robe, but she had a smudge of mascara under her eye that made her look like a desperate raccoon. "If the notary sees that, they'll flag it instantly." "I'm trying, Mama," Marcus snapped, slamming the pen down on the cherry wood desk. Her handwriting was all over the place at the end. It's hard to mimic someone who's shaking from, you know.
"I know," Brenda said, her voice dropping to a cold, clinical whisper. "But we don't have time for hard. That pharmacist is still lurking in the guest suite, and I want her out before the real audit begins. If we get this deed filed at the courthouse tomorrow morning, it doesn't matter what the will says. The house will already be ours."
I watched as Brenda reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, clear plastic bag. Inside was a stamp, a custom-made notary seal with the name of a woman I had never heard of. "Where did you get that?" Marcus asked, his eyes widening. "I paid a guy in 5 Points $2,000 to carve it," Brenda said, a smug smile spreading across her face. "And I found an old notary log at a garage sale. We're going to backdate this to 3 weeks ago, before she got confused." My blood went cold. They weren't just stealing jewelry anymore. They were committing high-level felony land fraud. If they filed that deed and it got recorded, I'd have to spend tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees just to untangle the title, even with the will on my side. Marcus took the pen again. He took a deep breath, wiped the sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand, and slowly traced Big Mama's name onto the official deed. Ethel May Richardson. He did it. It looked surprisingly good. If you weren't looking for the slight hesitation in the R, you'd think Big Mama signed it herself while sitting in her favorite wingback chair. "Perfect," Brenda breathed, leaning over his shoulder. "Now stamp it." Marcus pressed the fake notary seal onto the paper with a heavy thud. He looked at the document like it was a masterpiece. $2,400,000, just like that. We're finally in the big leagues, Mama. "We were always in the big leagues," Brenda corrected him, taking the document and blowing on the ink to dry it. "We just had to wait for the dead weight to drop off." She looked directly at the portrait of Big Mama. For a second, I thought she saw the camera. My heart stopped. I held my breath, my fingers hovering over the record button on my iPad. But she didn't see me. She just sneered at the painting. "You should have given it to me when I asked, Mama. Now I'm taking it anyway." They both laughed, a loud, ugly sound that echoed through the quiet house. They had no idea that I had recorded the entire thing in 4K resolution. I had the video of the practice signatures, the conversation about the $2,000 fake seal, and the actual act of the forgery. I tapped the screen to save the clip to my encrypted cloud drive. I also sent a copy to a hidden folder in my business email. Then I did something that the gray rock version of me shouldn't have done, but I couldn't help myself. I needed to see just how deep their narcissism went. I stood up, walked out of my room, and headed toward the study. I made sure to heavy step so they could hear me coming. When I pushed the door open, the room went silent instantly. Marcus scrambled to cover the deed with a newspaper, and Brenda tucked the notary stamp into her robe pocket so fast she almost tripped over her own feet. "What do you want, Jade?" Brenda hissed, her face turning a bright, angry red. "I thought I told you to stay in your room and pack." "I just wanted to know if I could have one of Big Mama's old journals," I said, my voice soft and trembling. I played the scapegoat role perfectly. I looked down at my feet, acting like I was terrified of her. "The one from her HBCU days. It's on the bottom shelf." "No, you can't have anything," Marcus yelled, standing up so fast he knocked over the $2,500 pen. It rolled across the floor and landed near my shoe. "Everything in this room is private. Get out." I looked at the pen on the floor. I saw the ink leaking onto the rug, a rug that cost $4,200. "You dropped your pen, Marcus," I said, pointing at it. "I don't care about the pen. Get out before I throw you out," he screamed. I backed away, putting my hands up in a defensive gesture. "I'm going. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt." I closed the door behind me and leaned against the wall in the hallway. I could hear them whispering furiously on the other side. "Did she see it?" Marcus hissed. "No," Brenda replied. "She's too stupid to know what a deed even looks like. She's probably going to cry herself to sleep now. Let her go." I walked back to my room, but I wasn't crying. I was smiling. Because while Marcus was busy hiding that forged deed, he didn't realize that when I looked down at that pen on the floor, I saw exactly what he had signed. And he forgot one tiny, very expensive detail. Big Mama was a member of a very specific high society Black women's organization. Every single official document she signed for the last 40 years was signed in a very specific shade of presidential blue ink that cost $45 a bottle. Marcus had used the black ink cartridge that came with the pen. He thought he'd won. He thought he had the house in the back. But he forgot that a forged document is only as good as the person checking the details. And I wasn't just checking the details. I was the one who had already called the county clerk's office to place a fraud alert on the property title an hour ago. He thought he had the deed, but he forgot I still had the video of him holding the stamp. Now, y'all won't believe the nerve of these people. It was Saturday morning, the day I was supposed to be out by noon, but Brenda and Marcus hadn't even started moving my things. Why? Because they were too busy setting up for what they called their legacy brunch. They had the audacity to host a celebration of their new wealth in a house they just tried to steal, while Big Mama's scent was still lingering in the curtains. I woke up at 6 o'clock to the sound of caterers banging $200 copper pots in the kitchen. Brenda had spent $3,500 on a spread from a boutique bistro in Buckhead that specialized in soul fusion, which really just meant they charged an extra $15.50 for putting a sprig of microgreens on top of a deviled egg. I didn't argue. I didn't pack. I just put on my most faded, broke pharmacist uniform and walked into the kitchen. "Oh, good, the help is awake," Brenda said, not even looking up from her reflection in a silver tray. She was wearing a lavender power suit she claimed was custom Armani, likely costing $2,800, but the way the fabric pulled at the seams told me it was a sample sale special. Jade, since you haven't left yet, you can at least make yourself useful. The church mothers will be here at 11 o'clock. I want you on mimosa duty. And for heaven's sake, stay in the kitchen unless someone needs a refill.
I thought I was supposed to be gone by noon, I said, my voice flat and empty. I was leaning into the gray rock method so hard I practically felt like part of the granite countertop. Change of plans. We need someone to handle the service, so Marcus and I can focus on our guests, Brenda said, waving a hand dismissively. She was draped in $5,000 worth of new jewelry that I recognized instantly. It was Big Mama's vintage gold collection. Brenda was wearing it like she'd earned it.
Marcus strolled in a few minutes later, smelling like an entire bottle of $400 Creed Aventus and looking like he'd spent the night celebrating his victory with the forged deed. He was wearing a pair of Gucci loafers that cost $895, and he was walking with a swagger that only a narcissist with a fresh lie can maintain.
"Yo, Jade, catch!" he shouted, tossing a dirty towel at me. "The driveway's full of luxury SUVs. Make sure you keep the mimosas flowing. We've got some big players from the HBCU alumni board coming, and I need the vibe to be Millionaire Row." By 11 o'clock, the house was packed with the flying monkeys, the neighborhood gossips and church mothers who lived for a good scandal and an even better brunch. They were all sitting around Big Mama's mahogany dining table, the one where we used to have Sunday dinner every week. "Oh, Brenda, the place looks different," Sister Margaret said, squinting at a new modern art piece Marcus had hung over the fireplace. It was a neon splash of paint that looked like a crime scene and probably cost $1,500. "Where is all of Ethel's antique porcelain?" "I've moved it into archival storage," Brenda lied, leaning back in her chair and sipping from a crystal flute. "We're modernizing the estate. Big Mama always wanted us to bring this house into the new century. It's what she would have wanted." The gaslighting was thick enough to choke on. Big Mama hated modern art. She loved her lace doilies and her collection of hand-painted plates from her trips to Charleston. I moved through the crowd with a silver tray, pouring champagne that cost $85.50 a bottle. I was silent. I was invisible. I was exactly what they wanted me to be, the scapegoat who had finally accepted her place at the bottom. "Jade, honey," Sister Margaret whispered as I topped off her glass, "are you doing all right? We heard you were having some financial struggles since the pharmacy hours got cut." I looked at Brenda. She gave me a sharp, warning look. She had been busy ruining my reputation before the first egg was even cracked. "I'm getting by, Sister Margaret," I said softly, keeping my head down. "I'm just here to serve." "Bless her heart," another woman whispered, loud enough for me to hear. "It's a shame when the education doesn't match the bank account." Marcus was across the room, leaning against the $2,400 credenza, showing a group of men a digital file on his phone. I knew exactly what it was. He was showing them the deed he'd forged. "Yeah, we're looking at a full liquidation by the end of the month," Marcus bragged. "The property alone is appraised at $2,400,000. I'm thinking of taking the capital and moving it into a tech hedge fund. Real high-level stuff." The men nodded, impressed by the fake baller energy he was radiating. They didn't see the black ink on the signature or the fake notary stamp. They just saw the Gucci loafers and the Buckhead address. Brenda stood up, clinking her glass with a silver spoon.
Everyone, I want to thank you for coming to celebrate the Richardson family legacy. It's been a hard road, but we are finally in a position to take this estate to the next level. We're going to be a pillar of this community just like Big Mama intended." She looked at me and smirked. "And we want to thank Jade for being such a dedicated assistant during this transition. We wish her the best of luck in her future endeavors, wherever they may take her." It was a public dismissal, a public humiliation wrapped in a thank you. "Aunt Brenda, you've got a little something on your jacket," I said, stepping forward. I was holding a pitcher of fresh orange juice. "What? Where?" she asked, looking down at her $3,000 Armani suit. I didn't wait for her to find it. I tripped on the edge of the $8,000 Persian rug and let the pitcher tilt. A steady stream of bright, pulp-heavy orange juice splashed right across her lap, soaking into the fabric and dripping down onto her $400 silk pumps. "Oh my God, you clumsy idiot!" Brenda screamed, jumping up so fast she knocked her chair over. The Armani fabric immediately started to pucker and shrink, a dead giveaway that it was a cheap synthetic blend and not the high-end wool she'd claimed. The room went silent. The church mothers gasped. "I am so sorry, Aunt Brenda," I said, my voice trembling with fake fear. I reached out with a napkin, but she swiped my hand away. "Don't touch me! Look at this! This suit is ruined! Do you have any idea what this cost?" she shrieked. "I want you out, right now! Forget the 48 hours! Get your rags and get out of my house!" "But, Aunt Brenda, I haven't finished the servants," I whispered, playing the role of the broken maid to perfection. "Get out!" she roared, her face turning a deep, ugly purple. The mask of the grieving daughter had finally slipped, revealing the narcissist underneath. Marcus stepped forward, his eyes burning with malice. "You heard her, Jade. You're done. Don't make me call the cops to drag you out of here in front of everyone." I looked around the room. The church mothers were looking at me with pity, and the flying monkeys were already texting their friends about the breakdown in the Richardson house. "I'll go," I said, my voice cracking just enough to make it believable. "I'll go right now." I turned and walked toward the kitchen, but I didn't go to my room. I went to the hallway where I'd hidden my main camera hub. I pulled the master data card from the wall unit and tucked it into my bra. I walked out of the front door with nothing but my small backpack and my dusty scrubs. Behind me, I could hear Brenda still screaming about her dry cleaning bill and Marcus telling everyone to ignore the help's little tantrum. I walked down the long, winding driveway of the $2 million estate. I didn't look back. I reached the street and pulled out my phone. I dialed a number I'd had saved for weeks. "Mr. Sterling, it's Jade. The victory brunch is over. They've kicked me out publicly," I said, my voice finally dropping back into its calm, cold reality. The neighbors saw everything. Brenda's true colors are all over the church group chat by now. "Excellent," Mr. Sterling replied. "And the deed?" Marcus showed it to at least 5 people. "I have it all on video," I said, a slow smile spreading across my face. "And I have something else. I saw Brenda's specialty kit in the pantry while I was cleaning up the orange juice. She's getting sloppy." "Good. It's time to move to phase 3, Sterling said. "Your expert ally is waiting for you at the Midtown office. It's time to stop playing the maid and start playing the owner." I looked up as a black SUV pulled up to the curb. My driver stepped out and opened the door. I climbed into the back, the smell of the $1,200 leather seats finally making me feel like myself again. Brenda thought she'd won because she'd finally thrown me out of the house. She thought she'd won because she had a forged paper and a room full of gossips. But as the SUV sped away toward my penthouse, I realized she'd made one fatal mistake. She focused so much on kicking me out of the house that she forgot to check who was actually paying the property taxes.
He thought he'd won, but he forgot one small thing. I didn't just have the keys to the safe. I had the keys to the handcuffs that were already being engraved with his name.
Now, y'all won't believe the shift in energy the minute that SUV door closed and the hum of the Buckhead traffic faded away. I spent 3 years playing the role of the broke relative who couldn't keep her life together, but as we pulled up to the glass tower in Midtown, I felt the weight of those dusty scrubs finally start to lift. I wasn't heading to a shelter or a studio apartment in the hood like Brenda and Marcus hoped. I was heading to the nerve center of the Richardson empire. The lobby of the Sterling and Associates building was all white marble and glass, the kind of place where the silence itself sounds expensive. I walked past the security desk, and the guard didn't even look at my bleach-stained scrubs. He just saw the way I carried myself and nodded. I took the private elevator to the 40th floor. When the doors opened, the view hit me first. You could see all the way to Stone Mountain, a vista that probably added $5,000 a month to the lease. The receptionist, a woman who looked like she'd been carved out of professional grace, smiled at me. "Good afternoon, Miss Richardson. Mr. Sterling is expecting you in the boardroom. Can I get you a sparkling water? We just got a shipment of the glass-bottled stuff from France." "I'm fine, thank you," I said, my voice finally losing that shaky scapegoat tremor. I walked into the boardroom, and there he was, the legal lion himself. Mr. Sterling was sitting at a table made of a single slab of African mahogany that cost at least $15,000. He had a bottle of 1996 Chateau Margaux sitting on the sideboard, a $4,200 bottle of wine. But he was focused on a stack of blue folders. "Jade," he said, standing up and pulling out a leather chair that cost $2,800. I saw the footage from the brunch. Brenda's reaction to that orange juice was, well, it was exactly what we needed for the character profile. She showed total lack of emotional control in front of the neighborhood's most influential witnesses. "She's convinced I'm on the street," I said, sitting down and finally letting out a long breath. "She thinks she won. She's probably in Big Mama's master suite right now, throwing out the handmade quilts from the HBCU Alumni Guild and planning where to put her $3,000 vanity." "Let her get comfortable," Sterling replied, sliding a folder across the table toward me. "The more comfortable she gets, the more mistakes she makes. And Marcus? He's already tried to sell the deed to a private investment group for a quick $800,000 payout. He doesn't realize the county clerk's office has already flagged the title." "The black ink was a nice touch," I said, leaning back. "He's so arrogant, he didn't even check Big Mama's pen. He just assumed wealth was about the label, not the details." "It's always the details that trip up a narcissist," Sterling agreed. He tapped the folder. "Now, let's talk about the poison pill your grandmother insisted on. Big Mama wasn't just a church mother. She was a strategist. She knew exactly what Brenda and Marcus were capable of. That's why she set up the conditional trust." "Explain it to me like I'm at the kitchen table, Sterling," I said. "Simple. The $12 million fortune is split into 2 parts. Part A is the visible assets, the house, the cars, the jewelry. Part B is the hidden liquid assets, the stocks, the offshore accounts, and the patents. Big Mama left Part A to Brenda and Marcus in a pre-will that they've likely found by now. But," he paused, a sharp glint in his eye, "there's a clause. If the heirs are found to have committed any act of financial elder abuse, forgery,
Or, and this is the heavy hitter, medical negligence, Part A is forfeited. Everything, including the house, reverts to the caretaker listed in the final will. And the medical negligence part? I asked, my mind going back to the video of the clear liquid. Sterling's face went grim. He pulled out a piece of paper from the very bottom of the pile. I got the preliminary toxicology report back from the private lab you sent the samples to. The clear liquid Brenda was putting in Big Mama's tea, it wasn't a sedative. It was a concentrated dose of digitalis. In an 80-year-old woman with a minor heart flutter, it wouldn't look like murder. It would look like a natural stroke. I felt a chill run down my spine that had nothing to do with the office air conditioning. I knew Brenda was a narcissist. I knew she was a thief, but I hadn't wanted to believe she was a monster. She was killing her own mother for a house she didn't even own, I whispered. She was trying to, Sterling corrected, but because you were the one actually preparing the meals and cleaning the cups, you were able to swap the tea most of the time, weren't you? Every single time I saw her near that teapot, I said, I'd dump it and replace it with chamomile. I thought I was just being paranoid. I thought I was just protecting Big Mama from Brenda's herbal remedies. Your paranoia saved her life for 3 extra months, Jade, and it gave us the evidence we need for a criminal referral. But we aren't calling the police yet. If we move now, Brenda will hire a high-priced defense attorney with the estate's money and tie this up for years. We need her to spend her own fake money first. We need her to commit to the fraud publicly. The Red Wedding event, I said, nodding. The gala for the Richardson Foundation. Exactly, Sterling said. We let them host the event. We let them stand on that stage in front of the whole city. We let them announce their inheritance to the world. And then we pull the rug. I've already hired a forensic accountant, an expert ally who specializes in fake baller takedowns. Her name is Sarah, and she's already tracked Marcus's laundering to a shell company in the Caymans. How much did he take? So far, $342,000.50. He's been busy, but every cent he takes is another year in a federal cell. I stood up and walked to the window. Below me, Atlanta was glowing in the twilight. I thought about Big Mama sitting on her porch, watching the sunset and knowing that her own daughter was circling like a vulture. She had played the long game, and now it was my turn to finish it. What's the next move? I asked. You stay broke, Sterling said. Stay at the Midtown Hotel I booked under my firm's name. It's the Four Seasons, $675 a night, but don't worry, the firm is covering it as a consulting expense. Tomorrow, you're going to have a chance encounter with Aunt Brenda at the high-end boutique where she's buying her gala dress. She'll love that, I said, a slow smile spreading across my face. She'll love seeing me struggling to find a job while she's dropping $10,000 on a sequined lie. Let her love it, Sterling said, pouring a glass of the $4,000 wine and handing it to me, because by the end of next week, the only thing she'll be wearing is a jumpsuit that doesn't come in Armani silk. I took a sip of the wine. It was smooth, cold, and tasted like justice. Brenda thought she'd won because she had the house. Marcus thought he'd won because he had the black ink deed. But they forgot that Big Mama and I were the ones who went to the same HBCU, and we were both taught that you never enter a fight unless you've already secured the perimeter. He thought he'd won, but he forgot one small thing. I wasn't just the maid who knew where the silver was hidden. I was the one who knew where the bodies were buried, and I was the one holding the shovel.
Now, y'all, I wasn't just sitting in my $675 a night hotel suite at the Four Seasons, ordering room service and watching the sunset over the city. While Brenda was probably at the house throwing away Big Mama's collection of vintage HBCU yearbooks to make room for her ego, I was deep in the trenches with Sarah, the forensic accountant Mr. Sterling had hired. Sarah didn't look like a number cruncher. She looked like she spent her weekends on a yacht in the south of France, wearing a $2,400 linen set and sipping chilled rosé. But the woman had a mind like a steel trap and a set of software tools that could find a missing penny in a mountain of sand.
"Look at this, Jade," Sarah said, clicking her mouse. We were in a private war room she'd set up in a suite 2 floors down from mine. She had 3 curved monitors that probably cost $1,800 apiece, and they were all glowing with spreadsheets that looked like a nightmare.
The math wasn't mathing from the jump, Sarah continued, pointing to a line item. Your cousin Marcus isn't just a fake baller on Instagram. He's been running a full-scale embezzlement scheme through a shell company called M Legacy Marketing Group. I leaned in, my gray rock exterior as steady as ever, but inside, my blood was starting to simmer. Legacy? He named his theft after the family legacy. The audacity is truly breathtaking. It gets worse, Sarah said. He's been sending invoices to Big Mama's estate for strategic consulting and digital management for the last 18 months. Here's one from June. $12,000.50. Here's another from August, $25,000 even. In total, he's drained $342,000.50 from her liquid cash reserves. I thought back to those Sunday dinners at the house. Marcus would sit there, eating Big Mama's fried chicken and mac and cheese, complaining about how the economy was tough, and asking for a little help with his car note. All the while, he was literally siphoning the lifeblood out of her accounts. What did he spend it on? I asked. I knew the answer, but I wanted to see the receipts. Well, it wasn't on rent, Sarah laughed, a sharp, cold sound. I tracked the payments from the M Legacy account. He spent $8,400 at a high-end jeweler in Buckhead for that fake-looking diamond pinky ring he wears. He spent $5,600 on a VIP table at a club in Vegas. And my personal favorite, he's been paying $2,100 a month for a storage unit where he's hiding a collection of vintage sneakers he thinks are going to appreciate in value. He was stealing from her while she was alive, and now he's trying to steal the house she died in, I whispered. He's sloppy, Jade. That's the thing about narcissists. They think they're the smartest person in the room because no one has called them out yet, Sarah said, her fingers flying across the keyboard. He used the house Wi-Fi to upload the forged invoices. I have the IP address logs. And I have the metadata from the deed he showed the neighbors at the brunch. He created that document on a $500 laptop he bought using Big Mama's credit card.
I sat back in the ergonomic leather chair, a piece of furniture that felt much more supportive than the wooden stools in Big Mama's kitchen. So we have the forgery, the embezzlement, and the digital footprint. What's the catch?
The catch is that he's currently trying to wash the last bit of the estate's cash, Sarah said, her face turning serious. He's trying to transfer $500,000 into a crypto wallet before the formal will reading. If that money hits the blockchain, it's gone. It'll take years to get back, if we ever do. He's moving fast because he knows Sterling is onto him, I said. Exactly. But he doesn't know about the expert ally in the room, Sarah smiled. I've set a technical trap. Every time he tries to initiate a transfer over $10,000, it triggers a security verification that pings my phone. He thinks it's the bank being cautious. He doesn't realize I'm the one holding the approve button. Just then, Sarah's phone buzzed on the mahogany table. She looked at the screen and smirked.
Speak of the devil. He's trying to move $50,000.25 right now. Probably wants to buy a new watch to wear to the red wedding gala Brenda is planning.
Let him think it's pending, I said. I want him to feel that frustration. I want him to sweat.
Oh, he's sweating, Sarah said. I can see his login attempts. He's refreshed the page 14 times in the last 3 minutes. I stood up and walked to the window. Down below, the lights of Buckhead were twinkling like a box of spilled diamonds. I knew that in the main house, Brenda was probably sitting at Big Mama's vanity, trying on the $4,000 Chanel pearls she'd stolen from the safe, thinking she was finally the queen of the hill. They thought they'd won because they'd kicked the dusty pharmacist out of the house. They thought they'd won because they had the loud voices and the flashy clothes.
But as I looked at the data on Sarah's screen, I realized they were just two small-time crooks who had accidentally picked a fight with a woman who had the resources of a Fortune 500 company and the patience of a saint.
Sarah, I want a full report ready by tomorrow morning, I said, my voice cold and focused. Every invoice, every IP address, every sneaker purchase. I want it all bound in a folder that looks so official it'll make Brenda faint.
You got it, Sarah said. Are you ready for the next step?
I am, I said. It's time for the one last chance. I'm going to meet Brenda for lunch tomorrow. I'm going to give her a chance to walk away with her dignity. I already know she'll reject it, but I need the church mothers to see that I tried to be the bigger person.
You're playing the long game, Jade, Sarah noted.
I'm playing the only game that matters, I replied. The one where I win and they end up in a cell that costs exactly $0.00 a night. Now, y'all, I knew Brenda wouldn't take the bait. A narcissist never thinks the bridge is burning until they're standing in the middle of the fire. But I needed that interaction. I needed her to humiliate me one more time in public just to make sure the flying monkeys were fully primed for the reveal. He thought he'd won because he had a marketing agency, but he forgot one small thing. I'm the one who knows how to read a balance sheet, and his life was currently deep in the red. Now, y'all won't believe the location Brenda picked for our final chat. She told me to meet her at a restaurant in Buckhead, where the valet parking alone costs $35 and the bottled water is imported from a volcano in the South Pacific. It's the kind of place where people go to see and be seen, usually wearing enough jewelry to fund a small nation.
I pulled up in my dusty Toyota, looking like a total glitch in the system. The valet looked at my car like it was a pile of trash, but I handed him a $20 bill and walked inside with my head held high. I was wearing a simple black dress I'd found at a thrift store for $12.50. No labels, no logos, just the gray rock in human form.
Brenda and Marcus were already seated at a prime corner table. Brenda had an Hermes Birkin bag sitting on its own chair, a bag that costs at least $22,000 if it's real, but the leather looked a little too plastic under the chandelier lights. She was wearing a pair of Cartier love bracelets that retailed for $6,900 each. Marcus was busy shouting into his phone about leveraging assets and market volatility while sipping a glass of scotch that cost $85. "You're late," Brenda snapped, not even looking up from her menu. "We've already ordered the caviar service. It's $320, so don't even think about asking for a bite. You can have a side of bread if the waiter is feeling charitable." "I'm not hungry, Aunt Brenda," I said, sitting down. I didn't reach for the water. I didn't touch the silk napkin. I just looked at her. "I'm here to give you one last chance."
Marcus let out a laugh so loud the people at the next table turned to stare. A chance? For what? To join your Save the Pharmacy fund? Sis, look at us. We just moved $2 million into a holding account this morning. We're the ones giving out chances now.
The math isn't mathing, Marcus, I said, my voice as cool as the marble floors. I know about the M Legacy invoices. I know about the $342,000.50 you took from Big Mama's liquid cash, and I know about the black ink on that forged deed.
The color drained from Marcus's face for a split second before his narcissist mask snapped back into place. He leaned over the table, his breath smelling like expensive liquor and cheap lies.
You don't know anything, he hissed. You're just a scapegoat who's mad she got left out of the will. You're gaslighting yourself if you think anyone is going to listen to a broke pharmacist over the legal heirs of the Richardson estate.
I have an offer, I continued, ignoring his outburst. I've spoken to Mr. Sterling. If you sign a confession admitting to the forgery and the embezzlement, and you vacate the house by midnight tonight, I will convince the board not to press criminal charges. I'll even give you a settlement of $100,000 each to go start over somewhere else, away from Atlanta. Brenda slammed her hand on the table, making the $400 crystal glasses rattle. $100,000? Are you joking? We are sitting on an empire worth $12 million. You think you can walk in here with your dusty shoes and tell us to walk away for pennies?
It's not pennies, Aunt Brenda. It's a plane ticket out of a prison cell, I said. I know about the special tea you were giving Big Mama. I have the toxicology report from the lab. It cost me $2,500 to get it rushed, and it was worth every cent.
Brenda's eyes turned into pinpricks. She leaned in, her voice dropping to a jagged whisper. You think you're so smart. You think you're the expert because you have a degree from an HBCU. But you're nothing. You were the maid. You'll always be the maid. Big Mama died because she was old, not because of some tea. And if you even breathe a word of that nonsense to the church mothers, I'll sue you for everything you don't have.
Is that your final answer? I asked.
Our final answer is that you're banned from the Red Wedding Gala on Friday, Marcus sneered, pulling a gold-embossed invitation out of his pocket and ripping it in half in front of my face. We're hosting the entire neighborhood. The mayor is coming, the bishop is coming. We're announcing the new Richardson Foundation, and you aren't even invited to watch from the sidewalk.
We've already hired a security firm for $10,000 just to keep people like you away, Brenda added, a cruel smile spreading across her face. So go back to your little hotel or whatever hole you're hiding in. You lost, Jade. The house is ours, the money is ours, and Big Mama is finally where she belongs, 6 feet under so she can't complain about how we spend it.
The level of disrespect was truly a testament to how far gone they were. They weren't just thieves, they were vultures who had forgotten that the person they were picking at was still very much alive in spirit. I stood up. I didn't feel angry. I felt a strange sense of peace. I had given them the one last chance that the expert ally and Mr. Sterling had insisted on. I had played the part of the merciful relative, and they had spit in my face.
Bless your hearts, I said softly. It's the most polite way a black woman can tell you that you're absolutely doomed.
Yeah, whatever. Get out of here. Marcus waved me away. Waiter, bring us another bottle of the $1,500 Krug. We're celebrating a successful pest control session.
I walked out of the restaurant and into the warm Atlanta air. I didn't go to my Toyota. I walked around the corner where a black Mercedes-Benz Maybach was waiting for me,
a car that costs $200,000 and features seats that massage your back while you plan your next move. I got into the back seat and opened my laptop. Sarah, the forensic accountant, was already on a video call. "Did they take it?" she asked. "They laughed at it," I said. "They're committed to the gala. They've spent another $50,000 on decorations and VIP catering in the last hour. Marcus just authorized a payment for a $5,000 ice sculpture of himself." "Perfect," Sarah said, a wicked grin on her face. "The technical trap is fully primed. Every single screen at that gala is linked to my master hub. When they stand up to give that speech, they aren't going to see their legacy video." "And the police?" "Mr. Sterling has the warrants ready to be signed. He's just waiting for the public act of fraud to be completed on stage," Sarah replied. "You're ready for the red wedding, Jade?" I looked at the $2,000 custom suit hanging in the back of the car, the one I was going to wear when I walked back into Big Mama's house as the rightful owner. "I'm ready," I said. "They wanted a show. I'm going to give them a finale they'll never forget." Brenda thought she'd won because she had a fake bag and a stolen seat at a high-end table. Marcus thought he'd won because he had a ripped invitation and a bottle of expensive bubbles. But as the Maybach pulled away, I realized they'd made the biggest mistake a narcissist can make. They forgot that the maid doesn't just clean the house, she knows exactly where the trap door is. He thought he'd won, but he forgot one small thing. I'm the one who paid for the ice sculpture he's so proud of, and I'm about to make sure his entire world melts right along with it.
Now, y'all won't believe the circus Brenda had the nerve to set up in Big Mama's backyard just 3 days after she tore up my invitation at lunch. She didn't just throw a party, she staged a full-blown production to announce her dominance over an estate she'd basically stolen. I was sitting in a high-tech surveillance van parked 2 blocks away with Sarah and Mr. Sterling watching the whole thing go down on a monitor that cost $3,200.50.
The setup was the definition of new money doing too much. Brenda had hired a crew to set up a massive, climate-controlled tent that covered the entire lawn, where Big Mama used to host the neighborhood Sunday dinner. That tent alone cost $18,000.00 for a one-night rental. It was filled with crystal chandeliers that hummed with enough electricity to power a small village, and the floral arrangements, towering pillars of white orchids and gold-dipped roses, came with an invoice for $12,600. Brenda was center stage, vibrating with the kind of smug energy you only see in people who think they've finally gotten away with murder. She was wearing a sequined gown she claimed was custom made for $7,500. It was so bright it practically blinded the church mothers who were huddled in the corner, looking at the ice sculpture of Marcus with pure confusion. Marcus had really outdone himself with that one. He'd spent $5,000 on a life-sized carving of himself holding a globe, which was currently melting into a puddle of $250 a bottle champagne. He was walking around in a suit that cost $6,400, slapping people on the back and acting like he'd built the Richardson legacy from the ground up with his own 2 hands. "Can you believe the audacity?" I whispered, watching Marcus refill a glass for the bishop. "He's literally drinking the money he stole from Big Mama's medical trust." "Let him drink," Mr. Sterling said, checking his watch. "A classic piece worth $22,000. The more he brags, the more the neighbors will remember when the truth hits the screen. Sarah, are we ready?" "The technical trap is fully loaded," Sarah said. She was tapping away on a laptop that cost $4,800. "I've bypassed the event coordinator's local server. When Marcus goes to play his Legacy of Excellence video, he's going to get a very different kind of presentation.
I've synced the audio to the entire surround sound system. $10,000 worth of speakers are about to tell the real story." I looked back at the screen. I saw Aunt Brenda grab a microphone. She looked into the crowd of Atlanta's elite, doctors, lawyers, and HBCU board members who had known Big Mama for 40 years. "Everyone, if I could have your attention," Brenda's voice boomed through the speakers, sounding like she was practicing for a coronation. "Tonight isn't just about a foundation. It's about the passing of the torch. My mother, Ethel May Richardson, was a woman of substance, but she knew when it was time for the next generation to take the lead. She entrusted me with this house, this land, and this future." She took a dramatic pause, dabbing at a dry eye with a silk handkerchief that cost $85. "It hasn't been easy. We've had to deal with distractions, people who wanted to take advantage of Big Mama's kindness in her final days. But we stood firm, and tonight we show you the fruit of our labor." The flying monkeys in the crowd started clapping. I saw Marcus puff out his chest, adjusting his diamond watch. He thought he was the king of Buckhead. He thought the dusty pharmacist was crying in a motel room somewhere, defeated and broken. He didn't know that I was wearing a custom-tailored black suit that cost $5,200, sitting in a van that held the digital axe about to fall on his neck. "Marcus, honey, come up here and show them the vision," Brenda cooed. Marcus strutted up to the stage, grabbing a remote control like it was a scepter. "I put this tribute together myself," he told the crowd. "It shows the transition of the Richardson estate from a simple home to a global brand. It's about the hustle. It's about the win." He pointed the remote at the massive 85-inch LED screen that sat behind the podium. The lights in the tent dimmed. The chatter of the crowd died down. People leaned in, expecting a polished video of Big Mama smiling and Marcus looking like a CEO. I felt my heart racing, but I kept my gray rock focus. I reached out and tapped the execute button on Sarah's secondary screen. Now, y'all won't believe the silence that fell over that tent when the screen didn't show Big Mama's face, I murmured to the empty van. The video started, but there was no music. There were no flashy transitions. Instead, the screen flickered to life with a grainy, high-definition shot of Big Mama's study. The timestamp in the corner showed it was from 2 weeks ago. The audio kicked in, loud and crisp. "Come on, Ethel, just one more time." Marcus's voice rang out through the $10,000 speakers. The crowd gasped. On the screen, Marcus was hunched over the cherry wood desk, sweating as he practiced Big Mama's signature with the $2,500 pen. Brenda was right there behind him, holding the fake notary seal. The bishop dropped his glass. It shattered on the floor, splashing $40 a plate hors d'oeuvres. Brenda's face on the stage went from a smug smile to a mask of pure, unadulterated terror. She looked at the remote in Marcus's hand, but it wasn't working. Marcus was frantically clicking the button, his thumb shaking so hard he nearly dropped it. "Turn it off! Someone turn it off!" Brenda screamed, but her voice was drowned out by the recording of her own laughter on the screen. "We just had to wait for the dead weight to drop off," the video, Brenda said, sneering at Big Mama's portrait. I leaned back in the van and watched as the neighbors, the people they had lied to and bragged to all night, started to back away from the stage like it was on fire. The church mothers were covering their mouths in horror. Brenda looked out at the crowd, her $850 silk robe, now a $7,000 gown, seeming to shrink on her body. She thought she had staged the perfect victory. She thought she'd buried me along with the truth. But she forgot one small thing.
The video wasn't over, and the red wedding was just getting started. "Sarah," I said, my voice steady and cold, "trigger the second clip, the one with the tea." He thought he'd won because he had the remote, but he forgot I'm the one who owns the signal. Now, y'all, the air in that $18,000 tent got real thin real fast. If you thought the forgery video made the church mothers drop their fans, what happened next made them nearly lose their religion. I watched from the monitor in the van, my face as calm as a frozen lake, while Sarah hit the key for the second file. On that massive 85-inch LED screen, the image of the study faded out and was replaced by a crystal-clear shot of the kitchen. This was the heart of the house, the place where Big Mama used to spend her Saturdays making peach cobbler and teaching me how to season a cast-iron skillet. The timestamp showed it was 4 days before Big Mama passed. In the video, the kitchen was quiet, illuminated only by the light over the stove. Then Aunt Brenda walked into the frame. She wasn't wearing her $7,500 gala gown. She was in a cheap housecoat, looking over her shoulder like a thief in the night. She pulled a small glass vial out of her pocket. The audio was so sharp you could hear the clink of the vial against the rim of Big Mama's favorite class of 1972 HBCU commemorative month. "One more dose, Mama," Brenda whispered on the screen, her voice echoing through the $10,000 speaker system. "Just to help you sleep, just to help us all get what we deserve." The crowd and the tent didn't just gasp this time. It was a collective moan of horror. I saw Sister Margaret, a woman who had known Big Mama since they were both in the choir together, clutch her chest and sink into a chair that cost $45 to rent for the evening. Brenda was standing on the stage, frozen. The light from the projector was hitting her face, making her look like a ghost in a $7,000 dress. She tried to speak, but her throat must have been as dry as a Georgia drought. That's a deep fake," Marcus finally screamed, breaking the silence. He ran toward the projection booth, tripping over a floral arrangement that cost $850. "Jade did this. That broke-tail pharmacist is trying to gaslight all of you. She's a narcissist. She's jealous." He reached the cables and started pulling at them like a madman. He managed to yank one loose, but Sarah had already anticipated that. She'd set up a wireless override. The screen flickered for a second, but then it came back even brighter. "I'm sorry, Marcus," Sarah muttered in the van, her fingers dancing over her $4,800 laptop. "But the truth doesn't have a power cord you can just pull." The video continued. It showed me, the dusty maid, walking into the kitchen a minute after Brenda left. The camera caught me looking at the tea, smelling it, and then pouring the entire mug down the sink with a look of pure, cold suspicion on my face. I replaced it with fresh water and a tea bag from a $2 box of chamomile. The crowd saw the scapegoat saving the matriarch's life, while the golden child tried to end it. "You monster!" a voice shrieked from the back of the tent. It was Mrs. Gable. She stood up, her finger pointing at Brenda like a spear. "We sat at your Sunday dinner table. We ate your food while you were doing this to your own mother?" "It wasn't like that," Brenda shrieked back, her narcissist mask finally shattering into a million jagged pieces. She turned to the crowd, her eyes wide and wild. "She was suffering. I was helping her. And that house belongs to me. Do you hear me? I'm the daughter. I'm the one who stayed."
"You didn't stay, Brenda," Mr. Sterling's voice boomed. He had stepped out of the van and was walking toward the tent, his $2,800 suit looking immaculate under the gala lights. He was holding a stack of blue folders. "You hovered. There's a difference."
Marcus finally gave up on the cables. He turned around, his $6,400 suit covered in dirt and flower petals. He looked like a cornered animal. "Sterling, get out of here. This is a private event. We paid $10,000 for security."
Actually, Marcus, the security firm you hired hasn't been paid, Sterling said, stopping at the edge of the stage. The $50,000 check you wrote them, it bounced 20 minutes ago. My firm stepped in and covered the bill, which means, he paused, looking up at the security guards standing by the entrance, they work for me now.
The $250 a bottle champagne was forgotten. The ice sculpture was a heap of melting slush. The flying monkeys, who had spent the last hour laughing with Brenda, were now scurrying toward the exits, desperate to get away from the stench of the scandal.
Brenda looked at the screen one last time. It was playing a loop now, the moment she poured the vial into the cup. It was a testament to her greed, playing over and over in 4K resolution.
"Where is she?" Brenda screamed, her voice cracking. "Where is Jade? I know she's here. Come out here and face me, you coward." I stepped out of the van. I had changed out of my gray rock scrubs. I was wearing a custom-tailored black wool suit by Tom Ford that cost $5,200. My hair was pulled back, and I was wearing the only piece of jewelry I'd taken from the safe before I left. Big Mama's 10-carat diamond HBCU ring. I walked toward the tent. Every step felt like I was reclaiming a piece of my soul. The crowd parted for me like the Red Sea. I didn't say a word until I reached the base of the stage. I looked up at Brenda. She looked down at me, her face contorted with a hate so pure it was almost beautiful. "You think you've won?" she hissed, leaning over the podium. "You think some videos are going to stop me? I have the deed, Jade. I have the house. You're still just a guest in my world." I didn't blink. I didn't raise my voice. I just reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. "Actually, Aunt Brenda, you don't even have a chair to sit on," I said. I turned the screen of my phone toward her. It showed a live notification from the county clerk's office. "Property title status. Fraud alert active. Transfer voided." "The math finally stopped mathing for you," I said. Just then, the sound of sirens began to wail in the distance, getting louder with every second. Blue and red lights started dancing against the silk walls of the $18,000 tent. He thought he'd won because he had the remote, but he forgot one small thing. I'm the one who called the police, and they aren't here for the caviar. Now, y'all won't believe how fast the mood shifted when those blue and red lights started bouncing off the silk walls of that $18,000 tent. The sirens were so loud they drowned out the hum of the climate control units, and for the first time in her life, Aunt Brenda looked like she didn't have a single word left to say. The front flaps of the tent were pushed aside by 3 men in dark windbreakers, with FBI emblazoned across the back in bold yellow letters. Behind them were 4 Atlanta PD officers, their boots stomping over the $85 a yard white carpet that Brenda had laid out to make the backyard look like a cloud. "Brenda Richardson? Marcus Richardson?" the lead agent asked, his voice cutting through the remaining silence like a hot knife through butter. Marcus didn't even try to be a boss anymore. He turned tail and tried to bolt toward the back of the tent, heading for the gap where the caterers were hiding. He tripped over a $300 floral pedestal, sending a vase of imported lilies crashing to the floor. The water soaked into his $6,400 suit, making the silk cling to his legs as the officers tackled him right in front of the ice sculpture. "Get off me! Do you know who I am?" Marcus screamed, his face pressed against the damp carpet. I'm the CEO of M Legacy. I have assets. I have a $2 million deed.
You have a forged document and a mountain of federal wire fraud charges, Marcus, Mr. Sterling said, stepping forward. He didn't even look at the struggle on the floor. He kept his eyes on Brenda.
Brenda was backed up against the podium, clutching her $7,500 gown as if the sequins could protect her from the handcuffs. This is a mistake. My mother left me this house. Jade is the one you want. She's been squatting here, stealing from the pantry. I walked up the steps of the stage. I didn't rush. I didn't shout. I just stood there, looking at the woman who had spent the last week calling me a dusty maid and trying to throw me into the street. Aunt Brenda, the police aren't here for the groceries, I said, my voice steady and cold. They're here for the $342,050 that Marcus moved into a shell account. And they're here for the clear liquid Sarah found in the guest house, the vial that matches the toxicology report for Big Mama's final heart failure. The color didn't just leave Brenda's face, it looked like her entire soul evaporated. She looked at the FBI agent, then at the church mothers, who were now standing in a tight circle of judgment. "Wait," Brenda whispered, her eyes darting to the blue folder in Mr. Sterling's hand. "The reading was supposed to be tomorrow. You can't do this without the reading." "The reading already happened, Brenda," Mr. Sterling said, opening the folder. "I held a private session with the primary beneficiary 3 days ago. Big Mama was very clear. She knew you'd come for the house. She knew Marcus would come for the cash. That's why she left a specific identification clause in the final amendment." He cleared his throat and began to read, his voice carrying through the $10,000 speaker system that was still broadcasting to the entire neighborhood.
I leave my entire estate, including the Buckhead property, the pharmaceutical patents, and the liquid sum of $12,400,065 to my faithful caretaker, to the woman who sat by my bed, who managed my medication when my own daughter wouldn't answer the phone, and who kept the legacy of this family alive while others tried to pick it apart. Brenda let out a jagged, ugly laugh. "The maid? You're giving it to the maid? I'll sue. I'll tie this up in probate for the next 20 years. "The will specifies the caretaker by name. Brenda," Sterling said, turning the page. "It leaves everything to Jade Richardson Farm-Gee, my granddaughter, my protector, and the true owner of the Richardson Foundation." The silence that followed was heavy enough to sink a ship. Brenda looked at me, then at my $5,200 Tom Ford suit, and finally at the 10-carat diamond ring on my finger. The math finally mathed for her. You had the money this whole time?" she stammered, her voice shaking. "You let us treat you like that?" "I wanted to see who you really were when you thought I had nothing," I said. "And y'all didn't disappoint. You showed the whole neighborhood exactly what you do to the people who love you for a few dollars and a fake title." The lead FBI agent stepped up onto the stage. "Brenda Richardson, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, grand larceny, and pending charges related to the medical endangerment of Ethel Richardson. You have the right to remain silent." As the metal cuffs clicked shut around her wrists, the flying monkeys finally realized the party was over. The neighbors who had been laughing at Brenda's jokes were now whispering about how they always knew something was off. "Jade, please!" Brenda shrieked as they led her down the stairs. "I'm family. You can't let them take me in this dress. Think about Big Mama. Think about Sunday dinner." "I am thinking about Big Mama," I said, watching her go.
I'm thinking about the fact that she's finally going to have some peace in her own house.
Marcus was dragged out next, his Gucci loafers scuffing against the pavement. He looked like a broken toy, all the fake baller energy drained out of him. He'd spent $50,000 on a gala to celebrate a life he'd stolen, and now he was leaving in the back of a Ford Explorer that didn't have a single piece of Italian leather in it.
I stood on the stage, alone now, looking out at the wreckage of the red wedding. The ice sculpture had completely melted, leaving nothing but a puddle of water and the smell of cheap ambition. Sarah walked up and stood next to me, her $4,800 laptop tucked under her arm. "The accounts are frozen, Jade. Every cent is back where it belongs. What do you want to do with the tent?" I looked at the $18,000 structure, the crystal chandeliers, and the $5,000 worth of orchid pillars. "Call the shelter downtown," I said. "Tell them I have enough gourmet food to feed 300 people. And call the church mothers. Tell them Sunday dinner is back on for tomorrow, but this time only the people who actually loved Big Mama are invited." Brenda thought she'd won because she had the loudest voice and the flashiest gown. Marcus thought he'd won because he had a forged signature and a marketing agency. But as the tail lights of the police cars disappeared down the driveway, I realized they'd forgotten the most important rule of the Richardson house. He thought he'd won, but he forgot one small thing. I was never the maid. I was the master of the house, and I just finished the spring cleaning. Now, y'all won't believe the audacity that Aunt Brenda had when she walked into that courtroom 3 months later. You'd think a woman facing felony charges for poisoning her own mother and forging a $2,400,000 deed would show a little humility. But no. She walked in there wearing a $3,500 vintage suit she'd somehow hidden from the forensic auditors, dripping in apology jewelry she probably bought with a credit card she hadn't managed to max out yet. Marcus was right behind her, looking like a shell of the fake baller he used to be. He didn't have his $895 Gucci loafers anymore. The jail had swapped those for a pair of $2 orange plastic slides. His hair wasn't faded, and he looked like he'd lost about 15 pounds of unearned confidence. I was sitting in the front row, right behind the prosecution table. I wasn't in my pharmacy scrubs today. I was wearing a custom-tailored navy dress that cost $2,100 and a pair of simple pearl earrings that Big Mama had given me when I graduated from my HBCU. I didn't say a word. I just watched them. The gray rock doesn't need to bark when the trap is already shut. "All rise," the bailiff barked. Judge Holloway didn't look like she was in the mood for any buckhead theatrics. She sat down, adjusted her glasses, and looked at the stack of blue folders on her desk, folders filled with Sarah's forensic reports and the 4K video of the special tea ceremony. "Mr. Richardson," the judge started, looking at Marcus. "The court has reviewed the evidence regarding M Legacy marketing. It appears you've been treating your grandmother's medical trust like a personal piggy bank. $342,000.50. That's a lot of consulting, wouldn't you say?" Marcus stood up, his voice cracking. "Your Honor, it was a family business. Big Mama wanted me to have that money. I was just managing the brand." Managing the brand by spending $8,400 on a pinky ring while your grandmother's prescriptions went unpaid? The judge didn't even look up. "The math isn't mathing, Mr. Richardson." The courtroom was packed with the church mothers. I could hear Sister Margaret whispering, "Mm-hmm," and "Lord have mercy" from the third row. This wasn't just a trial, it was the final Sunday dinner, and the truth was the only thing on the menu. Then it was Brenda's turn. Her lawyer, a man she was paying $500 an hour with money she'd borrowed from a high-interest predatory lender, tried to argue that she was overwhelmed and grief-stricken. "My client was under immense pressure," the lawyer stammered. "She only wanted what was best for the estate." "Is that why she was pouring digitalis into her mother's tea?" the prosecutor asked, standing up. He held up a giant photo of the vial we'd found in the guest house. A vial that cost Brenda exactly $45.20 at an underground pharmacy. A vial that matches the toxicology report for the late Ethel Richardson. Brenda jumped up, her narcissist mask finally falling off for good. "She was 80 years old. She didn't need that money. I'm her daughter. I'm the one who should be living in that house, not that dusty little pharmacist. Jade stole my life." The judge slammed her gavel so hard the sound echoed like a gunshot. "Sit down, Miss Richardson. One more word and I'll have you gagged." Brenda sat, but she was vibrating with a hate so pure it felt like the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. She looked at me, and for a second, I saw the flying monkeys in her eyes, the desperation of a woman who realized her scapegoat had actually been the lion all along. "I've seen enough," Judge Holloway said. "Marcus Richardson, for the counts of wire fraud, embezzlement, and grand larceny, I'm sentencing you to 7 years in a federal penitentiary. You'll also be required to pay back every cent of that $342,000.50 plus interest." Marcus slumped back into his chair, the reality of 7 years finally hitting him. No more Buckhead clubs, no more $5,000 ice sculptures, just a concrete cell and a $4 meal plan. "And Brenda Richardson," the judge continued, her voice turning into ice, "for the forgery of the deed and the criminal endangerment of a vulnerable adult, I'm sentencing you to 5 years, with the possibility of parole after 3. You are also permanently barred from any claim to the Richardson estate. You are, quite literally, worth $0 to this family now." The handcuffs came out. The handcuff special was finally being served. I watched as the officers led them away. Brenda was screaming about her Chanel suit getting wrinkled, and Marcus was crying like a baby. They were led past the church mothers, past the neighborhood elite they'd tried so hard to impress, and straight into the back of a transport van. As the doors closed on them, Mr. Sterling leaned over to me. "It's over, Jade. The house is clear. The accounts are restored, and the foundation is officially in your name." "Not just the house, Sterling," I said, standing up and smoothing out my $2,000 dress. "The peace, that's the real inheritance." I walked out of the courthouse and onto the steps. The Atlanta sun was bright, and for the first time in 3 years, I didn't feel like I had to hide who I was. I pulled out my phone and saw a message from the contractor I'd hired. "The renovations on the master suite are done. We've installed the new security system and the $12,000 walk-in closet you ordered. Ready for move-in?" I smiled. Brenda thought she'd won because she had a fake bag and a loud mouth. Marcus thought he'd won because he had a stolen deed and a marketing agency. But as I walked toward my silver Aston Martin, I realized they'd made the biggest mistake a narcissist can make. They forgot that the person who cleans the house is the one who knows exactly where all the dirt is hidden. He thought he'd won, but he forgot one small thing. I'm the one who's moving back into the house today, and I've already changed every single lock. Now, y'all won't believe how quiet a house feels once you've finally taken out the trash.
It's been 6 months since the handcuffs clicked shut on Brenda and Marcus in the middle of that $18,000 tent, and the air in this Buckhead estate has never smelled sweeter. The scent of Brenda's cheap knockoff perfume and Marcus's stale cigars is gone, replaced by the fresh smell of eucalyptus and the $500 candles I keep burning in every room. I was sitting on the back terrace this morning, watching the sun hit the pool. I wasn't wearing scrubs, and I definitely wasn't dusty. I had on a silk lounge set from Loro Piana that cost $3,200.00, the kind of fabric that feels like a cloud against your skin and costs more than Marcus's monthly car payment used to. I sipped on a glass of 1992 Screaming Eagle Cabernet. A bottle of this stuff runs about $5,000, and let me tell you, it tastes a whole lot better when you know you earned every drop by keeping your head down while everyone else was losing theirs. The new empire isn't just about the money, though the $12,400,000.65 sitting in my diversified portfolio certainly helps. It's about the fact that I've turned this place back into a home. I spent $140,000 on a full interior refresh, stripping away all that new money neon junk Marcus bought and bringing back Big Mama's classic style, just with a much higher price tag on the materials. Now, y'all won't believe the update I got from Mr. Sterling yesterday about the Golden Children. Brenda is currently sitting in a cell that's about the size of Big Mama's walk-in closet. She tried to gaslight the guards into giving her a better mattress, but they didn't care about her fake Chanel stories. She's serving her 5 years, and word on the street is she's been assigned to the laundry detail. The woman who called me a maid for 3 years is now folding industrial-sized sheets for 12 cents an hour. The math is finally mathing, and it's a beautiful thing to see. Marcus didn't fare much better. He's in a federal facility for 7 years. All those flying monkeys who used to like his Instagram posts, they've disappeared faster than a paycheck on rent day. He's realization that his marketing agency was just a paper trail leading him straight to a bunk bed. He doesn't have his $895 Gucci loafers anymore. He's lucky if he gets a pair of sneakers that fit. But I didn't let their toxicity stop me from doing what Big Mama wanted. I didn't just sit on the cash.
Last Sunday, I hosted the first Sunday dinner of the new Richardson Foundation. I didn't hire the boutique caterers who charge $50 for a deviled egg. I invited the church mothers over, and we cooked. We had greens, fried chicken, and my grandmother's signature peach cobbler. I served it all on the fine china Brenda tried to steal, the set that cost $2,800 and had been in the family for 40 years.
"Jade, sugar," Mrs. Gable said to me while we were sitting under the oak trees. "Big Mama is looking down, smiling. You didn't just save the house, you saved our spot." I realized then that being the gray rock wasn't just a survival tactic. It was a strategy for building something that actually lasts. I let Brenda and Marcus play their loud, flashy games because I knew that noise eventually dies down. Silence, on the other hand, is where the real power grows. I've officially endowed the Richardson STEM Scholarship for Black Women at my alma mater with a $3 million grant. It's going to fund the education of 50 girls every single year, girls who might be underestimated, girls who might be called the help, and girls who have the intelligence to run circles around any narcissist who tries to stand in their way. I walked back inside and looked at the portrait of Big Mama in the study. I'd replaced the hidden camera with a simple gold frame. I don't need to watch for thieves anymore. The security system I installed cost $75,000 and is linked directly to a private firm that doesn't bounce checks.
I checked my Patek Philippe watch, the $145,000 one I used to hide under my scrub sleeve. It was almost time for my board meeting. I'm the CEO of my own life now, and the broke sister narrative has been deleted from the archives. People always ask me if I feel bad for what happened to Brenda and Marcus. They say, "But Jade, they're family." And I just look at them and smile. Because family doesn't pour poison in your tea. Family doesn't forge your name on a deed while you're sleeping. And family certainly doesn't try to evict you from the only home you've ever known because they're too lazy to build their own. I've learned that your self-worth isn't determined by the people who try to bring you down to their level. It's determined by the boundaries you set and the receipts you keep. I spent years being the scapegoat, so I could eventually be the owner. And if I had to do it all over again, I wouldn't change a single second of the silence. I walked out to the driveway where my silver Aston Martin was waiting. It's a $220,000 masterpiece of engineering, and it purrs like a cat that just found the cream. I pulled out of the gates of the Richardson Estates, looking at the plaque I'd installed at the entrance. The Richardson Foundation. Excellence through integrity. I'm headed to the city to sign the final papers on a new apartment complex I'm developing for low-income seniors. It's a $22 million project, and I'm the lead investor. No legacy fluff, no fake ballers, just real work and real wealth. Brenda thought she'd won because she had a loud voice and a $7,000 dress. Marcus thought he'd won because he had a marketing agency and a stolen credit card. But as I drove toward the Atlanta skyline, I realized they'd forgotten the most important lesson Big Mama ever taught me at that kitchen table. They thought the story was over when they kicked me out of the house. They thought they'd reached the final chapter when the will was read, but they forgot one small thing. I'm the one who's been writing the script this whole time. And if you think this was the end of my revenge, you haven't seen the rest of my portfolio yet.